Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Educational Gamer and we are playing Strategic Command as the Allies in the war against Axis. It is early 1940. The Germans have been pushing heavily through the Low Countries over here, and we are currently trying to hold them off desperately as the American and French alliance over here. So we are trying to make sure that they don't come through here. Meanwhile, in Asia, we are playing China, trying to throw back the Japanese and having some success at that. So that is very good to see. We've finished our move, so it's in principle time to turn it over to the Axis. But in between episodes, I did a look around a little bit over here. And you know what? I do think it does make sense to bomb this Panzer division over here. As you'll remember, these little X's stand for infantry units, these little circles are tank units, this is a paradrop division, paratroopers, 1st Fallschirmjäger paratroops. This is an anti-air brigade. This is one of the new tank divisions that we formed, actually heavy tanks. So that's very good to see. And these guys here with the little 8, the lying 8 are bombers. These ones are fighters without the dot. So attacking over here, it will cost us 2 strength. It will not cost the enemy anything, but I do hope that it will reduce their readiness and morale and make it ever so slightly less potent for them to attack next turn. So let's go ahead. We are being intercepted, but we should have escorts. Yeah, there we go. So these guys will fight it out firstly. Yeah. Minimal losses on the fighters, somewhat higher losses on the bombers actually. Pretty damn high losses actually, so yeah, that's not too successful, but then again, the fighters, we reduced them a little bit, and I think we should see their readiness and morale drop down quite significantly here. I think it was above 100, we could probably see that over here, yeah. So hopefully it's going to be a little bit, they'll be a little bit less inclined to attack next turn. Other than that, there's one thing I do want to do in East Africa over here. So this historically Italian area, we are advancing to that with these forces, but we do have some garrison forces actually over here that I do want to push up a little bit, primarily to cut off their supply really. So let's advance a little bit over here, potentially get some points and throw back the Italians at least a little bit. Also I want to take this battleship over here on the Mediterranean coast, bring it up closer towards the enemy over here, and again attack them. Let's have a look at their readiness, 77, and morale, 84, so down here, sorry, in the bottom right. We are conducting some naval bombardment. It should hopefully, yeah, reduce their morale at least slightly. Let's take the light cruiser and bring it up towards this army over here as well, to do pretty much the same thing. So yeah, and we can withdraw back to port, so that should be fine. With these battleships over here, we could bring them up to The Hague, I guess. Conduct a little bit of a strike over there. Nah, I don't think that's what we would do. Okay, so that being said, let's end the turn over here, and let's see what the Axis does. I do want to zoom out a little bit so that we can see what's going on. Right, so we do have a decision to make. Many of the supply convoys from our colonies and allies pass through the Mediterranean or precariously close to the continental Europe. Due to the vital nature of these supplies and the rapid advance of Axis forces throughout Western Europe, the majority of these routes are now under extreme threat. It is urgently recommended to reroute that. Yes, we certainly do want to do that. Will result in reduced overall tonnage, but I do think it's going to be better, so that will remove them basically from the Mediterranean. Engineers complete fortresses, that's very nice as well. I do hope that this anti-A battery cold strike continues in Africa, in Australia. That's a pity. Ooh, some good development in spying and intel, that's good for the UK. Industrial technology level 1, that's also very important because the UK actually starts at 50%. And that moves it up by 10 percentage points, so that's very nice to see. Long-range aircraft for India being developed. I don't think that's going to be too important, but we do get the breakdown of our supplies, and it is increasing over here. So Yeah, all in all that looks pretty good to me, so let's see what the Japanese and in particular the Germans are going to do. I'm very afraid about the German advance into Europe. I don't think we'll be able to stem the tide over there, as historically the Allies were actually not able to do so. Yeah. They are reinforcing the tanks, that's a good sign. That means they can't move in there or move these tanks at all. Actually, the Japanese seem to be withdrawing some units from northern China. But we do see the carrier strikes going on. Well, so far so good. Nothing too bad. There we go, some bombers. Some air battles with our fighters and their fighters. Interceptors are doing their job fairly well, I have to say. Although they are, of course, suffering badly for it. Yeah, and the Germans are really focusing on that unit. This corps over here. Yeah. Italian bombardments? We haven't seen the German army take any advances yet, but it's typical that the AI seems to prefer the land movements. Japanese advances over here. That corps taking a definite beating over there. This is a very... and there we go. Yeah, they are trying to break through over there, and they actually destroyed the entire army, so that's certainly very bad news for us. An entire French army destroyed. We do have some reserves over here. Didn't quite get what that was. I think down there. Yeah, good going still in China. Yeah, it's mostly the Japanese suffering, except for this one corps, and they did spend a lot of resources to do that. Italy advancing as well. Yeah, I think. But not making too much progress yet. Although up here that's definitely discerning. And this down here as well, I mean, just the number of forces are a dramatic problem. Yeah, but Japan is suffering badly, especially in the south. But we'll take stock of that in a second. I do think the turn seems to end. And since it's now June 1940, another tank division. And they are pushing closer into that gap. We'll have a lot of troubles trying to stabilize that. Just the number of German forces, that's the serious bit of that. We might even have to think about removing or getting into a position that we can remove our UK troops, actually, as was historically done. I think in Operation Dynamo? No. We are disrupting some convoys. The New York Herald Tribune calls on the US to enter war, so we do hope that that will increase the percentage by which the US is looking to enter the war. I think it's mobilized. It was, I think, at around 37%, but I'm not too sure. Army destroyed. Yes. We are disrupting their supplies. That's good to see. 38, so that's not great. So, Red Army headquarters. Now would be a good time for us to increase our territory and income by annexing the Baltic states. One strategic benefit would be that an invader would have to travel more before reaching Leningrad. Yes, let's do that. Let's do as they did historically. So the USSR annexes Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia. Right, we do get a couple of new units, a new battleship for the Americans, a carrier for the UK, and some special forces in China, so that's very good to see. But we're not going to distribute them now. So, I think the most important issue is the German front over here. So nothing much has happened down here, and unfortunately we lost the entire army. Now France does... So what we really must try to do then is try to take out, or at least plug this gap over here. So we might have to withdraw our UK forces a little bit. We do have these tanks here as well. Could potentially do some damage. So I'm thinking we could pull these two British corps back, although that would leave the British army here a little bit exposed. And ideally I would like to be able to withdraw the British units in case that becomes necessary. Down here things seem to be holding up so far, so that's alright. We do see that this is exposed for now, but any attack across these lines would be sort of pointless, so I don't think that's something that we would like to do. But again, just look at that. Just look at the readiness of the French. It's 67%, their readiness 70%. So we'd be really, really hard pressed, and they do seem to have better infantry equipment. So yeah, we seem to be really hard pressed over here in terms of doing these attacks. We do have this tank division, and that is a very important asset for us. We could think about upgrading that, because I do think the French have the advanced tank tech. What would that do? Would increase your soft attack by 20%, your hard attack by 25%, and especially your attack and defense values against all sorts of things. That would be good. Although, on the other hand, we are trying to bring up forces over here and plug that gap. We should also think about removing these or swapping out these engineers, because they have built up their defenses over here. So I think it might be prudent to remove them and bring up something else and have the engineers take a bit more of a defensive stance, maybe down here. We could inflict significant damage on the Germans this way. And I think that's a good start. So that trade went as expected, so we are removing some of their power. And that does bring us to the question who we want to move up at least to plug this gap. If we leave the British army over here, they'll be badly mauled. So we could remove them. Can bring up a French corps in their stead. And I would much more like to reduce, to not have the French, to lose a French corps rather than a British one. So we might pull back all this way to stabilize the front, maybe. We could leave one unit over here, although it could be attacked by 3 armies, and that would probably be very devastating. Unless we can recapture this point. Could bring up the tanks over here and then attack. But you know what? Your readiness and morale is so low. So I'm gonna upgrade these guys actually to advanced tanks. It's gonna cost us a little bit, but it does mean they'll be much more successful next turn. And something that we do definitely want to do is reinforce our fighters. You can't be upgraded. That's alright then. We could strafe these guys. We could also bomb these guys. Bombing would entail them flying missions against us. So yeah, these guys are alright where they are, I guess. So it's really about bringing the engineers. We can't reinforce Amiens. We could build up reinforce or some things over here. We could also do that over here. I mean, this wouldn't be a bad space for the engineers, although I think the engineers just couldn't build up fortresses when close to the enemy. So let's actually try to bring the engineers over here and try to see whether we can build fortresses now. Yes, we can. So to our immediate north there is the sea, so there's no point in doing that. So I think we can reinforce against these 2 hexes, and that should be fine. Yeah, let's do it like such. And that's also allowing us a little bit better to withdraw towards the harbour should we ever try to do that. There's Sedan, the place where historically the breakthrough happened. So let's try to make sure that these guys will be alright. Bring up a French corps over there, and that should be alright. And then what we can do, I guess, you can move up all the way to Lille, right? Let's bring up our army to Amiens. You guys, yeah, you guys will go to Lille. You will go down here. And you're gonna come into here. and that should allow us to expose the French army while keeping the Germans where they while keeping the Brits a little bit closer to the front. Cover these engineers so they can build up the defenses. Have a lot of AA cover over here. You guys all are you covering these guys? No, you're covering these guys. That's all right then. 1, 2, 3. We didn't really need you, but you moved already. All right, that's fine. Let's make sure to reinforce these fighters because they'll definitely be needed. These fighters can cover the Brits, I guess, a little bit more closely. Let's bring them to Paris and hope that that is going to be enough to cover them. And then over here in the south, Marseille definitely needs to be reinforced, or do we maybe do a counterattack? Doesn't seem like that would do too much for us, so that's fine. And then over here, no point attacking, I'm guessing, and I'm guessing right. Let's attack over here though, so we can at least reduce their readiness a little bit. Reinforce over here. Bring up the battleship. Do some coastal bombardments. Likewise with the light cruisers. It should at least reduce their readiness here. 60%. Somewhat comparable to us now. We could start an attack on the fighters, and I'm actually wondering how would fighters look when they are defending against bombers. 1.5, and what's your strength against fighters then? So pretty much this is asking, yeah, 0.5. No, sorry, this would be over here. 2. Yeah, we could do that. We also have 140 strength left. Could be a good time to look for further defenses. To bolster our forces a little bit. In particular, we might think about the army that we just lost. Oh, we actually lost 2 armies already. Would cost us 150 points to rebuild them. Something that we don't have yet. So that is a little bit unfortunate. Let's make then sure to reinforce this headquarter unit, and everything else should be fine with the French over here. Not much more that we can spend these points on, so yeah, let's keep them as is. This strategic bomber, well, I guess we could bomb some of these places. Could bomb Brussels to disrupt their supplies a little bit. Though again, it wouldn't do too much for us. Hamburg, Bremen, Groningen. Maybe Essen area? Let's try that out. I think they will have some fighters, so we are gonna face... We're probably gonna get mauled, but I just want to see whether we can do anything over here. Interceptors, yeah. That was to be expected. Just lost 1 point. But we only make... we actually sacrificed 2 points for them. So no, that... I don't think strategic bombers are the way to go. Okay, other than that, this front seems to be as stable as it's gonna be, so let's keep on looking at South Africa. Let's keep a second over here to... You are order assisting. Why can't you actually take these guys? Well, that's fine. Okay, you're gonna advance into this town. And then towards Mogadishu. We are getting into enemy contact. But it's just garrison, so we should be able to push them back pretty handily. You can cover this town. Should be alright. You covering that town is dandy. And that does bring us towards you. You know what, this is just a garrison, so I think it should be fairly possible to conduct some attacks over here. And of course, as I say, that we are losing out. Okay, you should probably be reinforced. I recognize we have very limited supplies over here, but still, before we advance on Addis Ababa, that should give them some pause. Yeah, other than that, everything here seems to be fine. And you can see how these convoy routes are now rerouted to be through this sort of area. So that's alright. Good. well, I think that settles things for the British over here. Let's see whether we can't find more of the Italian fleet. So let's zoom in a little. Are you actually set to mode? Let's go to silent with you. And we're only trying to find the Italian fleet. Not having much success so far. So at least they don't seem to be in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. Which is so-so. We can advance a little bit more over here into the enemy territory around Tobruk. I'm guessing our supplies over here are starting to get very low. Yeah. Make sure to bring these guys up. Corps over here can be there. And then we do have some fighters, some bombers. Can't strike over there, so let's bring you up a little bit more closely. And then these anti-tank units will simply move along, and that should be alright. It's desert reconnaissance. I want to move through the oasis and then maybe towards the back lines. That might be okay. Once again, scout a little over here. Yeah, not much. That's fine then. The carrier forces. So I don't think we're seeing any Germans in the North Sea yet. So that should be all fine. Okay, there's a submarine. Can we attack it? We don't seem to be able to do that. So let's withdraw these guys. Bring up our destroyers. Do surprisingly little against the submarine. Bring up another round of destroyers. They are diving from attack, but they are taking some damage in the process, so that's perfectly fine to me. See whether we can't find anyone else. Apparently not, so let's bring the destroyers home. Battleships can stay in their bases. And these guys, again, just trying to find submarines and all of that, so that we're not getting overwhelmed. But so far everything seems to be good. These submarines, destroyers, can I upgrade you? I could, but again we established that that doesn't really do much for our submarines, so there's no point doing that. It can't be reinforced. Surprising. Let's bring it in there. And then these Frenchies should potentially go down here. Yeah, no submarines whatsoever. And I do think that there are no major threats down here. I think in fact that might have been the heavy cruiser that we destroyed at some point. That was coming potentially back to Germany even. Yeah, so let's bring everyone a little bit closer towards home. On the supply lines, of course, just in case we find something. But yeah, as expected, sort of there's nothing. Right, the Courageous. I do want to sort of station you in the Mediterranean. And you should actually probably... I can't set you because I did move you. Okay, that's fine. Light cruiser. Oh, this destroyer. Move around over here. Don't find anything. Light cruiser again. You're just coming towards the north. And that should be alright. Good. So you guys are a little bit exposed. That you might be bombed, but then again, if you are bombed, then no one else will be bombed by the same bombers at the same turn. So yeah, I would count that as a win. And that does settle everything, I think, for the UK. I do recognise that we do have a lot of points left. So we might look at research for the UK. I think the industrial technology increased a little bit, so we might spend more on that even. All of the other weapons, I mean advanced fighters, we are spending as much as we can already. So yeah, that should be alright. Then I think we could think about purchasing a unit as the UK. And I'm do think that maritime bombers might make some sense. Although, we're soon going to get long-range aircraft and anti-submarine warfare. But yeah, you're so good against submarines already. Let's purchase one of these units. I think it's going to do us it's going to do us good in the midterm. And other than that, we might consider some Royal Marines, though. They could potentially threaten Norway. And that might be very useful in that. I'm slightly concerned that the Axis are going to do something, so yeah, let's go ahead and buy some Royal Marines. That should be fine. Illustrious can be placed down here, so let's do that. Battleship can be placed in Maryland. Would you kindly take me to Maryland? I'm guessing that port is fine. And yeah, that does bring us to China then. Right, so we established that down here in the south there were some attacks, but all in all it doesn't look like the Japanese are doing too fine. So seems to be going on okay actually. So can we push you? No, we can't. You are... Yeah, well, we really shouldn't have these guys in. I would like to attach that army instead. Yeah, that's fine. Could attack over here. They are not entrenched. They are very low on their readiness, but we are starting to look not so great either, so maybe there's no point in doing that. We could start to be a little bit more aggressive over here. I think that might not be the worst idea. Our supply is fairly decent. I don't see how they can be pushed back. And their supply is okay, so they could be rebuilt, and that's not that great. Let's make sure to reinforce these guys. Yeah, and then we'll not do any of that. Right, over here, could do parity attacks. They're very low on supply. So I do want to move these guys up. Be ready to take on this garrison. Slowly pushing it back. Yeah, our supplies are not looking great here either, so we need to be careful at the very least. You know what, I do want to take this fight. And that was a mistake, but not a too bad one I think, so they will not definitely not be able to take us out the very next turn, so I think that's going to be alright. Again, these units are way too well positioned to do anything against us, so make sure to reinforce our fighters. You are doing fine. You can attack a couple of people, but it's not really going to lead anywhere, so yeah, let's just reinforce these guys to the max. It would be nice to cut this supply line, because it would reduce the supply that the enemy can get from over there, but we do need to reinforce our forces here. Otherwise we are a little bit trapped. These engineers are sitting sort of idle. And that does bring us towards the north. How's your supply? Your supply is okay-ish. Some of you seem to be a little bit more vulnerable though than others. If we cut this railway line, they would be in trouble. And I do think this army is potentially strong enough to move in over here and threaten them. We want to move over here, and that would have the benefit of shielding us from all of these three armies via the railway line. Yeah, sorry, via the river. Might not be the worst, but then again there's an army sitting in here. And you know what, likewise down here there's a river, so let's move in over here and cut that railway line. And then we'll move you over here just to cover the advance. You could attack, but you know what, we're not gonna. Simply make sure that we do have a strong army over there. Attacking the garrison seems kind of pointless. Attacking this corps down here doesn't do too much for us, but I guess it's going to reduce their availability somewhat. And then you definitely need to be reinforced. Yeah, but we can do that. We do have the funds. We can bring these guys up. Can't really threaten them too much with these, but think that should be fine. Now what we might do is bring up the engineers towards... We could even think about bringing them up over here. Or over here. And just prevent them from breaking out this way. Ideally I would like to move you down here. I could force march you. But then your morale would be so low that I don't think that's a too good idea. So let's simply bring you up over there and that should be fine. Good. That doesn't leave us with altogether too much money for the Chinese, which is unfortunate. You can't be reinforced? Nope. You can't be either. Yeah, that's a little bit unfortunate. I don't think we can purchase anything with you, can we? Well, garrisons, but why would we buy a garrison? Yeah, we haven't really lost anything, so that means we can deploy our new units here, these special forces. Yeah, I think over here is fine. Good. Not enough money to do anything with you. Some money for the US, some for the UK, not too much though, and some for India. So I think what we could do then is, as the Soviet Union, buy some, where are they, engineers, because I would like to start producing some fortifications along the German border, and that would be very lovely. And as the US, we probably want to invest a little bit more into research. Spying and intel is maxed out. Production technology might be worth taking a shot, as of course would infantry weapons into submarine warfare deck. All of these are tempting. I'm going to go for production technology, because ultimately we know that the US is going to buy a lot of stuff. And in terms of diplomacy, I don't think... Yeah, we don't have anything to do with India. So, should India research anything? More infantry weapons is always useful. I don't think we'll be building that many tanks with India. Infantry warfare is definitively useful. Production technology, you're very low on that. Spying and intel. I think we might actually start to build up our forces as India. We might actually do that with a single corps over here. Oh. Yeah, I do think I made a mistake because I did not in fact increase the infantry technology on that. But that's fine. That I think does leave us with with pretty much all of our money spent. I would like to do a little bit more against Italy over here. Could reinforce these tactical bombers. Would cost nearly all the money that France has, so let's not do it to the full. I wouldn't say it like that. They might actually break through over here. We'll have to see. Yeah. Situation down here is starting to get desperate, so in fact we might bring up some of our reserves from that front over here, so that at least we prevent a total collapse in the south, and then we have to think whether we can push back the Germans at least a little bit, at least hold them off. I mean, we are in June 1940 and Paris hasn't fallen, so that's very good to see, and these tanks will come into play very soon, and they're certainly going to be extremely helpful for us. So yeah, looking forward to see that, but other than that, I think it's a good place to put in a cut. So, thank you very much for watching, and to see you guys next time. Bye bye.